Hello, welcome back once again to Entertainment ReCast, the podcast offshoot of our YouTube channel, Entertainment Rebooted. As per usual, to the surprise of nobody, I am joined once again by my esteemed co-host, the one and only DJ. Say hi, DJ.
Hello.
All right, DJ, today we are talking about crossovers. Not necessarily something we see a lot lately outside of TV or in-universe films. Actually, crossovers are pretty old school kind of thing. They've been around for a while. The first majorly released movie crossover event was actually 1942's Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, and then Universal went on to have a number of other crossover movies that eventually became the Abbott and Costello. We have obviously Godzilla versus Kong in the 1960s, and then obviously now. And then we also have technically Van Helsing, Avengers, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen are kind of more along the lines of the modern crossover event where you kind of take older IPs, you mix them together, and you put them in a new story of sorts.
League of Extraordinary I actually think was a comic first.
Yeah, it was.
I was thinking I knew it was an original piece. I just couldn't remember what medium, but yeah, it was a comic series that they made into film. But yeah, it's they took a bunch of open characters from open source IPs and stuck them together in League, and that was just like an interesting concept. And it's been done a lot over the years, but yeah, in the last decade, I think there's been very few, if any, that have shown up.
Well, outside of TV, cartoons, and I mean, video games have their crossovers and stuff like that. It's not necessarily like the most widely done thing in movies anymore.
Well, even shows and entertainment in general. This one is less film oriented and more like overall, but to be fair, it's not done in any medium very much anymore.
It's fair.
Even by the people that used to do it a lot.
Well, I mean, I guess the most recent thing is this year with Godzilla X Kong. But that's kind of its own universe. It kind of falls into the same realm as like the MCU.
And it's been done before. You're taking a crossover that's already been done and doing it again and again and again. It's a known crossover thing. They've done Godzilla vs. Kong so many times. When it was first done, it would have been like, whoa, what? Those are two very different things. But
I mean,
but now it's like, okay, they it's still a crossover. It counts, but they kind of created a universe where they exist simultaneously in more modern telling. It's not really. It's like that's the problem with the MCU. It's like when it first started, it was kind of crossovery, but they really started putting them in this because each movie stood alone. But then they started to become. The Avengers, the first Avengers, is technically a crossover, even though they exist in the same universe. That is clear. But as they build the universe and make it more of its unique thing, it becomes less fun because, well, yeah, it's Marvel. It's all Marvel. It'd be more entertaining or interesting if they took DC or Iconic or another comic universe entirely and clashed them into there.
Well, yeah, like if you took some like Image comics and started mashing them together, like Spawn and Hellboy and
exactly.
Well, Hellboy's Dark Horse, isn't it?
Yeah, but like if you took Hellboy and put him in like the Marvel universe, that would be a crossover.
Right.
That's more of what I'm thinking rather than like a shared universe or even a cameo appearance. I'm thinking like a good old classic crossover.
Yeah.
One of my favorites of all time is Who Framed Roger Rabbit because it took Disney and WB animated characters who were kind of competing at the time and stuck them all in the same film. Yes, technically that their background characters, the main character is it's a little different, but it's still a crossover. You took two very different series of characters and threw them in the same film.
Right. You actually had a merging like across, not just universes but like studios, full on studios, had a bit of a merging. So yeah. Well, speaking of crossovers that you actually liked, let's just talk about what are some other crossovers that you've enjoyed And what are some that haven't necessarily worked in your opinion that you've seen?
Well, I gave give one first, John, since I gave already snuck in my Who Framed Roger Rabbit there sneakily in the earlier on.
I guess like as far as like recently, I would have to say like Scooby Natural, where they put together Supernatural and Scooby Doo.
Yeah,
I thought that worked really well. That was a fun episode.
it was clever. Well, and it works because one of the things that I think makes a crossover work is like sticking in a genre.
Yeah,
And Scooby Doo is that like horror mystery genre, but it's more lighthearted.
yeah. So throwing
Supernatural is just like dark Scooby Doo.
yeah, pretty much. And the thing is that it was just. It's a fun idea, and they did it really well. They played it really well. It was a fun episode. A lot of people actually really enjoyed that one, myself included. So I would say as far as like television in recent memory, I would have to go with Scooby Natural. As far as movies, probably Batman, Superman movie from the 90s.
Yeah.
I always really thought that was a lot of fun. Obviously, that eventually kind of became a normal occurrence, but Bruce Timm had kind of kept Superman and Batman separated in the TV shows. So having them come together and have like a full-on movie,
Right.
that's a fun crossover, I suppose.
Especially
like,
since
does
those
it
are
count?
it counts.
Okay.
It's in the same universe, but at the time it hadn't been done.
Yeah.
Like in the comics, they'd have some crossover, but even then, Batman and Superman were kept apart for a long time. But which was weird because they're a perfect foil of each other, and when they were put together, it was so good. I think what used it really well was the Batman Superman Adventures. That was the
cartoon that
the
cartoon,
cartoon,
after the
yeah.
movie,
Yeah.
or was like part of that.
But
I think it was
the
like,
90s DC animated universe,
Yeah.
where you had like Batman, and then you had the Superman Adventures, and then you had Batman and Superman together, and then you Justice League and so on and so forth. But the Batman Superman ones where they teamed up were really fun because they had such different methods of doing things. That's the kind of stuff that I like characters that fit in a world or universe together, but also contradict is really fun.
Yeah. Where they foil, they play off of each other really well. Yeah.
Like I can't remember if they ever did Hellboy and Spawn, but that's
well, they've done Batman and Spawn in the comics recently.
No, there was one that was really good that I really enjoyed. The TMNT and Batman.
Oh,
Batman TMNT. So TMNT.
This is where my parents died. Cowabummer.
But the thing about TMNT is it's an absurd comic series. Like it is. People talk about like some of the shows or things being weird and wacky, but I mean, you look at it, it's four Ninja Turtles that fight aliens from another dimension, and then they also travel through time. It's insane. But the characters are fun. And when they put them against Batman, it was just a fun, like weird juxtaposition of a very serious, dark character. And the Ninja Turtles, who are also Batman-esque serious, but also jokey. They make jokes, they're silly, but they're also really serious. So it's just a weird character. That was a really fun one. That was pretty recent. I'd love to see stuff like that, where they've done that in comics. Power Rangers. They've done Power Rangers crossovers with other mediums and comics a lot. I'd love to see those done more in like film and live action. I'd like to see that's the kind of stuff I enjoy, but those are the ones I liked. And then a great example I use a lot is late 90s, early 2000s Disney, where like every one of their shows had a crossover.
Yeah.
Not quite full shared universe, just a couple episodes in each other's shows. You had like Wizard's Way with Pace, That's So Raven, Sweet Life, Hannah Montana, and they did one with Kim Possible and Lilo and Stitch, and like they would mix their shows here and there. They don't do that really much anymore with newer ones. I know people have said they've done a few, but not like they did then. And crossovers are a fun way to get people of different fandoms to enjoy other people's stuff in a way that's lighthearted.
Well, yeah, because you get familiar with a character and you're like, oh, they were really fun in this episode of the show that I really liked. So maybe you have more of an interest in the actual series itself. So it's a good marketing strategy, especially if they're far enough distance, I think, so that they don't constantly cross over. So you're not questioning, like, why is it that they both live in New York and they never see each other?
Right. That was actually something that made Marvel Comics interesting. DC Comics, where they started out making all these characters and they started showing them in a shared universe, like running into each other. But then you'd have like whole comics where they never see a person they're like live down the street from. Yeah. It's like, why in Marvel does Spider-Man never see the Heroes for Hire? They're all in New York. Well, New York's a big place. Well, yeah, sure, but those guys are always in like generally in Harlem, and Spider-Man goes through Harlem, like he's there. So and why doesn't he run into Daredevil as much? Right? There's like 70 heroes in New York. You'd think they'd run into each other more often. Yeah. Avengers Tower is there. You have it's just kind of weird sometimes. Like they'll even show the tower in the background. You're like, this is the same universe. They're there.
But they never run into each other.
Right. That's what makes shared universe kind of rough sometimes. I think crossovers are more fun because it lets you jump in and out. That's why I like them so much. I like crossovers a lot more, I think, than I like a shared universe because it makes more sense. These people don't normally exist in the same world. We're throwing them together for this one thing. But you can completely believe why they never run into each other outside of this cameo.
Yeah. What's a crossover, like, just right off the bat that you think of when it did not work? We've talked about a few that we really liked. What's one that just never really stuck with you very well? Like, you just didn't like it much.
Alien vs. Predator.
That's fair. Yeah.
The whole thing about the Predators is the Predators hunt for sport, and the aliens are just like, they're just instinctual.
Well, they're
two completely different threats, and to humans. When they fight each other, it's less fun. The Predators just have an advantage of they're just hunting animals at that point.
Yeah.
It never had the same effect to me as the humans being the prey. That one always bothered me a little bit, especially in the comics. It didn't really hit like it did when it was one or the other against people. When it was those two versus, it's just
Yeah. That's fair. I don't know. Like, personally, I could talk about Birds of Prey being technically a crossover film because you're bringing in new characters into a universe, but it's a universe film. They completely butchered Cassandra Cain in it.
It's a crossover. I mean, I count in-universe films when you cross characters over. It may not be quite the definition we're looking for, but I mean, especially in film, you rarely are going to take people. In comics and books, you can do a lot more. Yeah. You can mix characters. You can be a lot more free with them, and they can be in multiple places at once. Like, you can have this guy over here writing a comic about Spider-Man being temp with this team while this guy's writing the same thing over here, and they can happen at different times. In a film, you're kind of limited. So, when they pull odd characters and stick them together, it feels more unique than it does in other mediums, I think. Especially with like DC and Marvel, like when you start taking like weird side characters from the comics and throwing them against people they've never really done anything with, it's new, it's interesting, despite the fact that these characters exist in the same universe.
Yeah, I don't know, like it's such a rare thing, I think, in movies specifically that, like, there's a couple of episodes that I thought were kind of cringy with like Disney movies, or not Disney movies, but like Disney TV shows where they had the crossovers and stuff like that. Actually, the greatest crossover of all time would be House of Mouse, which Disney still refuses to put on Disney Plus for some reason.
House of Mouse is actually a good example of a crossover.
Yeah, it's a great crossover.
They take all their Disney characters and they stick them in one place. Well, I mean, think about it. Well, I mean, what makes crossovers good? What makes them unique? What makes them fun?
Yeah, like
why is House of Mouse good? Why is it that I don't like Alien vs. Predator? Why is it that I liked when they mixed like the old Little Mermaid show with Aladdin? That was fun for me. But when they mix, I
think it might come down to putting your characters in a fun environment, but not a ridiculous or completely contrary to their nature environment.
Well, here's an example of one I didn't like. Freddy vs. Jason.
You just don't like horror movies.
Well, no,
clearly.
but that's not the reason I didn't like it is because it's the two horror people going after each other.
Yeah.
The point of these horror films is these are going after people. Now they're enemies of each other. Okay, you got two psychopaths trying to kill each other.
Yeah, awesome. Great. You can have some gory visuals. I agree, though. I think it was kind of dumb because what's scary about Jason and what's scary about Freddy are completely different things. And the thing is that I don't think Freddy could technically go after Jason because Jason is like a... What is Jason?
Jason is like an immortal
zombie?
undead zombie, and Freddy Krueger exists in the mind of the imagination of people. So
Yeah.
In the first place, it's a weird premise. But the problem is, what makes it not work is those two characters' element is terrorizing other people.
Well, yeah,
when they're
that's what
fighting
makes
each other,
them
it's
scary.
just a supervillain fighting a supervillain. This is like if you took, Venom is the opposite problem. It lacks the crossover. Venom, you took a villain that crosses over with Spider-Man and you put him by himself. You removed him from the crossover.
Yeah, you removed his foil.
You moved his foil. You moved his point. Like, what makes a good crossover, in my opinion, is one that the characters exist in their own elements. So the characters are just like, the character's not changed or adapted to make it fit in the universe they've been placed into.
Mm-hmm.
I can put this in 3 rules. So that's rule number 1. Rule number 1 is you put the character, you don't change the character to fit the motif.
Right.
You leave the character alone.
The
2,
character has to be true to the character's
right.
nature.
2, you put the character in a situation that makes sense. You're not gonna take like the T-Rex from Jurassic Park and throw it in
RoboCop.
well, yes, and then just throw it in there and just have it there. Like, well, what is the purpose here? It needs to make sense. There needs to be a reason why they're there. That it is at least palatable. Like, Freddy vs. Jason at least makes sense that they're there. The premise is fine because they're both horror villains. Okay. But the third thing that ruined for me is there has to be something the audience gains out of them being there together. Ready Player One.
Okay.
Is like the ultimate crossover film based on a book. They have characters, a lot of it's cameos.
Yeah.
But they have straight up crossover things where they're like going into The Shining. And they see the characters from The Shining. And then they go into there's the T-Rex from Jurassic Park. It makes sense because it's a game world without logical rules. It's chaos. It's perfectly fine. But if you did a Fast and Furious movie where a T-Rex suddenly started chasing them, you'd be like, what the heck is going on? What is this? Like, Fast and the Furious versus Jurassic Park is going to be a lot harder to sell. You'd have to have, why are dinosaurs suddenly in this world?
I don't know. It's Fast and Furious, man. They let go of reality a long time ago.
Well, I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm just saying you can't just have them show up.
Fast and Furious Revenge of the Fossil Fuels.
Revenge of the Fossil. Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
Perfect.
Oh,
fill my car with.
I know another one actually that I didn't really like. Rugrats Go Wild.
Is that a crossover?
It is. Rugrats and Wild Thornberries. It's the third
yeah.
Rugrats. I liked the first 2 Rugrats films. Rugrats Wild Thornberries is actually a really interesting premise. But what they messed up for me is they don't use any of the characters well.
Yeah.
They focus really heavily on like Spike being able to talk. And that's like a big moment, but not all the characters basically are just their own people doing their own things. The Rugrats do Rugrat stuff. And a lot of Thornberries do Wild Thornberry stuff. There's not a lot of mixing the characters.
It's not really a crossover. It's more of 2 unique things happening at the same time.
Yes.
In a similar area.
Yes, exactly.
Right. It's not like Jimmy Timmy Power Hour.
Yeah.
Where they literally are crossing over through universes. That's actually a great example of a crossover now that I think about it, because they do a full-blown crossover with that.
Actually, another one that I didn't like is I enjoy League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, the film. I like it but it's a misrepresentation of the source material.
Oh, it's a great idea.
It's a great idea.
It's
but
like
the film
Van Helsing,
it's boring is the problem.
Unlike Van
A
Helsing.
lot of the film is boring. And I'm like, you have these interesting characters like Jacqueline Hyde, and the Invisible Man, and Nemo. And Nemo doesn't do anything in the movie.
That's true. He just has gadgets.
He's
like,
in the submarine. He doesn't leave it. Like, you don't. They underuse these interesting characters where in the comics they really do stuff with them.
Yeah.
You have
Well, it might be too big. Like comic, you have enough room to like air out so that every character can get kind of a moment. It's kind of hard when you have a large cast of characters with a crossover to be able to properly air out all of the characters. As a result, some characters do end up becoming side characters when perhaps that's actually one of the characters you wanted to see.
right.
It's like a Justice League film where the only two superheroes you actually get to spend time with are Aquaman and Martian Manhunter.
Yeah, basically.
As much as you like those characters, what about Batman? What about Flash? What about Wonder Woman? What about Superman? There's too many players. You don't get to air out the character enough to feel like you actually get to know them and they do something productive.
Yeah. One of the
an
things
issue.
about League 2 that mattered is you kind of have to like know. The film basically goes off the premise you already know who all these people are.
That's true, and like two of them are a little obscure.
Yeah,
Like
the main character, Sean Connery's character, is an
obscure.
obscure legendary character.
Yeah.
It is a lore character. He's a myth, but I had to look him up. I didn't know who this guy was. And then the painting immortal guy,
Dorian Gray.
yeah,
I knew about him, but
he
would be obscure.
He's obscure.
Yeah, he's the one.
The vampiress. Like these are
Nina?
characters. Yeah, these are characters that exist in other mediums that came in, but a lot of them are obscure. Like it's not Dracula. It's not the one people know. You know what I mean?
No, it's
Dr. Jekyll,
yeah.
Mr. Hyde, the Invisible Man, Nemo.
Well, even Nemo's obscure.
That's true. Thousand Leagues Under the Sea is a book probably everyone's heard the name of, but they don't know Captain Nemo is part of it.
Right.
So yeah, you got to give a little more to these characters. You just assume we know who all these people are and don't do a very good job of putting them together.
Yeah.
That's a bad example of crossover. You got to give these another good example of crossover, Into the Spider-Verse.
I mean,
it's taking different Spider-Man from different universes. It puts them together. It lets them be unique, their own. Another example of what makes it good. They all get to be in their own elements. All the Spider people feel like individual characters, and when they mix together, they all have different opinions, different ideas. It's not just Peter Parker. That was another thing. They didn't pick Peter Parker specifically 50 times. They gave very unique Spider people, but even the Peter Parkers have differing opinions. That's good. You make them unique and feel unique from each other.
Yeah, exactly. They have to feel unique, and you have to, like I said, you have to let all the characters kind of air out. You have to give them enough space to be their own characters and not just a shell of themselves. I think another thing that can really shoot a crossover in the foot is too much of a change of style. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, so you can get like with TV crossovers, some of the TV crossovers, for instance, didn't work as well as other ones because the acting direction and the way that the energy of the show was run was very, very different. So when you threw, let's say, like Hannah Montana into Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. Sweet Life of Zack and Cody is an ensemble kind of show. It runs off of the chaos and the antics that are happening in the hotel.
Right.
Hannah Montana, on the other hand, is more of a teen sitcom. Like it's a sitcom, but it's more of a teen drama where you only focus on 3 different characters. What would have worked better actually would be if there was a crossover between like iCarly and Hannah Montana, because they're relatively similar.
Right, but they're on 2 different.
But
mediums.
they do.
One's on Nickelodeon, one's on.
Yeah, but you know what I mean though. Like
yeah.
It could carry over a little bit better. with something like that as compared to like complete chaotic ensemble comedy, full blown.
That was
ridiculous
actually
comedy.
it was
and
actually the
teen
opposite
drama
too with
comedy.
Wizards of Waverly Place when they mixed with Sweet Life on Deck. It actually worked really well because those are both kind of like chaos comedies of.
They had a very similar energy.
Yeah,
So when the
energy.
characters are acting the way that they do in that, it feels right and it feels justified. You could see the character acting like that. Whereas you throw Hannah Montana into the Tip Tin, why wouldn't she act like any of the other background characters that aren't part of the comedy? When she's supposed to be a headliner.
Yeah, it's
and if
hard.
she's a headliner, why does her energy... You have to force her energy to match a completely different style of comedy.
There's a to note that actually, because part of her character, she stands out as Hannah Montana, but she doesn't as her other character. It's kind of hard to do that in that scenario. That makes sense. Actually makes me think of so the girl, I can't remember her name, from Sweet Life on Deck. She was in High School Musical. She played
Ashley Tisdale.
Yeah, Ashley Tisdale. She played the villain.
Yeah.
In that one, and they were doing a production of High School Musical on Sweet Life, and they make a comment like, people say I look like hers, and everyone's like, really? I don't see it. That's the funny little like snippy fun comedy I like in crossovers. When like someone does something where they're in two different things and they make the comments like that, it's kind of funny. They did that in Ocean's 12 where they had what is her name?
Julia Roberts.
Julia Roberts
played Julia Roberts.
Pretended to be Julia Roberts, and it was hilarious. That's not technically a crossover, but it's a
similar vibe.
It's a similar vibe,
similar energy.
You make them work.
Okay. Moving on to our final discussion point here. What is a crossover that you would like to see made into a movie or series? We'll expand it out. We usually talk movies, but let's also just expand it out series.
I have lots of them, but one of the big ones I'd love to see is Mario and Sonic. I would love to see those two crossover. They've both had films now. It's a little tough, and you brought this up in our discussions on our own, is like that it's kind of hard because Sonic has been CGI in a real human world.
Yeah,
and Mario's 100% CGI. So that'd be tough. I don't know how you would do that, but it'd just be fun to see them. But honestly, I'd love to see Smash Brothers.
Yeah.
Done as a film. And I didn't actually want to until they had the Donkey Kong battle with Mario in the Mario movie. And I was like, okay, this would be really fun. Like,
it could actually work.
This actually could work. Like, especially if you gave it like story around it, you could really do some fun stuff. But I'd love to see that, like mixing more Nintendo properties being done and then start to mix together. I really enjoyed like some old crossovers from the back of the day was Nintendo Power Hour with
Jimmy and Timmy.
Well, the Nintendo Kid where I can't remember the name of the show. But it's the kid goes in the Nintendo world and he's like with the he has the Kid Icarus character and a couple others with him and he fights villains from different Nintendo properties. He fought like Mother Brain and other ones. It happened during when they had the Mario Bros show going.
Oh, that was before my time.
I know it was in the late 80s and 90s. But anyway, those that was really fun. I just reminiscing about that makes me. I'd love to see like now that these characters are becoming more. No, but they've also done other mediums. They have Sonic TV shows. They've done. They haven't done a Mario TV show in a long time. They did like 3 long time ago. But I'd love to see those two characters cross over. I'd love to see Smash Brothers. That'd be fun. I'd like to see some of that. The other thing is, as they start to do more video game films, I'd love to see some of those crossover like they have in games. But one that's like kind of a feels like a no-duh, but I get why it's not done, would be a Tomb Raider Uncharted crossover. Would just be a blast. And I'd love to see it in game, but I'd also love to see it in film because I really like the Tomb Raider film. Yeah. The Uncharted film had some issues, but I like what they're going with it. I like what they're trying to do. I just like to see those universes cross.
Well, I'd like to see how they play off of each other. They're very different characters that do very similar things. So it makes sense that they would run into each other, but also the dynamic would be interesting and diverse enough that you could have a lot of fun playing with the characters, I think.
The other thing, though, that was really weird to me, though, is that's actually kind of a mix where Tomb Raider, the game, is very much in the mysticism and sorcery and like the supernatural being real. And Uncharted is kind of, but it's more scientifically explained.
Well,
the film
third act
switched.
reveals it. Yeah.
Yeah, the film switched it. The Uncharted was a little more supernatural, kind of, and Tomb Raider was more scientifically explained. And I was like, huh. But other than that, I'd love to see those mix. That's some of mine. I have more, but I'll let you go.
Oh yeah, I mean, you stole mine.
There's no way
I will never share my ideas with you ever again, DJ. But one idea that I think would be the greatest crossover event of all time is none other than The Fast and the Furious and Mario Kart.
Mario Kart, Tokyo Drift. Honestly, though, there was was it College Humor that did like no, it was Saturday Night Live did a gritty Mario Kart. It was actually looked really good. with Pedro Pascal as Mario. That was awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I'm joking. That would just be absolutely ridiculous. It'd be fun to see as a sketch, but not necessarily as a full-on movie.
I don't know. I'd watch a movie if they do it well, like a parody film. Well, that's okay. So, just a quick side note: parodies, in a way, also do a lot of crossover work with parodies. It's very common to do crossovers with parodies, especially with like the scary movies and stuff like that. They did a lot of crossovers. But it's a parody of those original characters. They're all original. They're parodies of. They're not those characters. But I would count that in a way like that would be really fun to take some unserious stuff and just make some wild mix. Like take John Wick and the guy from Taken and put them in a movie together. It doesn't have to be serious. Just make it fun. Like make it entertaining, and I'll watch it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But go ahead. Sorry.
That's fine. So, as far as like real world, they've hinted at possibly doing a John Wick and Nobody crossover.
Okay, that would be a good one.
I think I'm very interested if that project ever actually takes off. They hinted at it. They talked about it a lot, especially after Nobody was such a success.
Yeah, that would be a good one. Another one would be Jack Ryan with
Jack Ryan. Like Jack Ryan could work,
especially if he's have him hunt.
Yeah,
John Wick.
Have him hunt John Wick.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as like book crossovers, one that would be actually kind of fun would be like probably like a Jack Ryan or Jack Reacher crossing over with Pike Logan.
Jack Reacher is what I meant. I meant Jack Reacher,
yeah.
not Jack Ryan. Jack Ryan is from the Tom Clancy novel.
But
Jack Ryan's Tom Clancy
could hunt people down. Jack
Reacher him in 24.
Oh yeah, that would
Jack Ryan mixed with what's his name from 24 would be amazing.
Kiefer Sutherland.
Kiefer Sutherland's character, yeah. Or him and Kiefer Sutherland from 24 with oh my gosh, Die Hard.
Oh, John McClane.
John McClane. Those two would be a fun team.
Or you could also
do very similar methods but different motives. It'd be very interesting to watch them, like seeing what they do, someone else do, and be like, "Don't do that. That's wrong," but they do it.
or how about this? Burn Notice and Jack Reacher.
Okay. No. Yeah.
Like that could be a fun series.
Actually, one I wanted to see was Covert Affairs.
Okay.
With they never did a crossover with Covert Affairs and Burn Notice, and they're both USA shows. And they're both CIA, and it would have been really fun just to have a mention of, we have this situation with this guy that keeps causing us trouble over here in Miami. And that's all he would have to do, and I would have, squeed. And instead, we got a crossover with, Covert Affairs and White. I think they did it with a White Collar.
Or was it Suits? Suits had a crossover with
somebody. Or maybe it was Suits. I don't know. Suits and White Collar might have done one.
Actually, did Burn Notice do a crossover with Royal Pains?
Yes.
Yeah, those two did. Kind of odd.
I think so. I think they did. That sounds right. I watched all those shows, and they did a few crossovers, but never the ones I expected them to do.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing I like when you own all your properties. Like they did this with the Hawaii Five-0 did one with NCIS.
Oh, and Bones did one with Sherlock. Not Sherlock. Sleepy Hollow.
Did they do a Sleepy
Yeah,
Hollow? That would have been cool.
It was a cool idea. It did not work at all.
But the problem I have with that one is Sleepy Hollow actually has horror elements, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. But the other thing too is that it has a lot of mysticism and the supernatural involved in it.
That doesn't work with a show that doesn't want to talk about this very scientific show.
Yeah, whereas Bones is like as real as it can possibly
The problem
get,
with that is you get into the moment of, was that real or was
it a dream? Was it
that can kind of mix up a little bit? Like if you took like Fringe and X-Files would be a good crossover. Mm-hmm. But Fringe and Bones wouldn't be because they're just two different universes.
Or even X-Files and Bones.
But
because literally Bones is so grounded that it doesn't give way to a lot. Like one that would actually work would probably be like Grimm and Sleepy Hollow.
Grimm would be good with Sleepy Hollow, or Grimm with Supernatural.
Ooh, that would be cool.
Grimm with Supernatural would be good.
That could be interesting.
Those would be fun ones. Like you take similar genre that's kind of goes back a little bit to like what doesn't work. You can't take an element that's like incredibly surreal and fantasy and throw it in a hyper realistic grounded show.
Yeah.
Because it feels weird and wrong. Unless you do it in like a dream way. Like it's
well, you have to
I know people get mad about canon, but I don't really care as much about canon about things. Like nothing is canon and everything is canon as far as I'm concerned. But it throws me off when you have a show that's like super serious and grounded against, like if you took Star Trek and Star Wars.
I was just about to say
those don't work together.
You can never do that together.
They both have supernatural elements, but Star Wars is more in the mysticism and magic. Whereas,
it's a classic.
Whereas Star Trek is just the unknown, like God, like upper levels of being.
Well, and it's a thing
like different layers of reality, kind of thing.
And it feels more grounded because it actually is following like a military expedition into the unknown.
Right,
so
and it's
unfathomable things could happen.
And it's turning theory into reality, whereas Star Wars is just playing with fantasy.
Yeah,
those are crossovers that don't work, and I don't really want to see those, but I want to see some like fun one. You know what I would love to see is more Muppets films. Muppets are good crossover where they took like Muppets and did Perry's film. I'd love to see like Muppets do Star Wars,
actually,
and stuff like that.
Let's save that. Let's just do an episode on what movies would be good as a Muppet.
As a Muppet film? All right, we'll do that. We'll talk about that
as
later.
A separate episode.
Okay,
so
Well, I mean, we talked about like a lot that we like to see. So just kind of wrap up. What's a few more just like dream, even if it's ridiculous, like what you would really just like to see throw together that you think probably wouldn't work, but you'd still want to see anyway. It's like, it's going to be a train wreck, but you want to see it.
Terminator and RoboCop.
Okay.
I think that would be interesting. Back to the Future, and I'll just throw an idea. Back to the Future and Indiana Jones.
That would be actually a lot of fun.
Like
that would be a lot of fun, but it would be totally a train wreck.
It would be a train wreck. That is like
So one I actually want to see that I know would be a total train wreck is I want to see Transformers go against another IP. Like Transformers G.I. Joe or Transformers Ninja Turtles. I'd love to see some of these like old 80s cartoons like go into each other's universes. Be a mess.
Actually, Transformers Power Rangers.
That's been done in comics. And that would be fun.
That would be fun.
That would be fun. Star Wars, that would be a fun one. Another one that I think would be totally ridiculous that wouldn't really work, but still be so much freaking fun. Would be He-Man.
Okay.
And Ninja Turtles.
That would be like literally an acid trip of a show.
Insane. But I want to see it happen. There's just some weird ones. Like I just want to take a bunch of like old 80s cartoons and like throw them at each other, but in film. Apparently, well, they're apparently doing the Last Ronin. They're doing the Ninja Turtles, the Last Ronin.
Yeah.
Story arc in live action. Like
R-rated.
That is an interesting thing. Like taking some like one shot comics. That's something I've wanted them to do with Marvel for a long time. Yeah. They do it kind of with the Marvel animated series, which is What If?
Yeah,
which is based off the What If comic idea. But they're all almost original stories. Yeah. I'd love to see them take more adaptations from like old comics that were one shots, like World War Hulk or not World War Hulk. I can't remember the one where Hulk is like the dictator of the world.
Oh, when he's Maestro?
Maestro, yeah. Maestro, like stuff like that. Do that with some things. Do one shot, single films where these are ideas that are feel untapped, and it'd be in crossover territory. Yeah. You take like and mix them in with other properties and things. Just go wild, have fun.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think crossovers are fun. They're meant to be fun. Have fun with it.
Yeah.
Speaking of having fun, we like to have fun on this channel. We would love for you to join us on the YouTube channel if you are not currently watching it on YouTube. If you are on YouTube, though, please hit that like button. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below related to crossovers and what you think works, what doesn't work. What's a fun idea that you would like to see made into a movie or a TV
That's
series?
What I want to hear from the audience the most. I want to know what crazy ideas people have.
We would love to hear it. We would love to hear it. Put that in the comments below. Otherwise, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. We do podcasts like these twice a month, as well as talk about old movies, bad movies, and we also do a weekly review of the newest theatrical release. So if that interests you, please consider subscribing. Otherwise, we will see you guys, hopefully, in the next one.